guys, Liz from the Nail Hub here, and I am back with Jim McConnell from Light Elegance. If you guys don't know, Jim is the brains, well, are the brains or is the brains? I never know how to say that properly. But
be the brains?
Jim
be the brains. No.
Jim be the brains behind Light Elegance. I'll just put it that way. So this awesome guy creates all of the products here and knows everything there is to know about UV cured gels, right?
That's a tall order.
I know, but I think we're gonna put you to the test, and I think it's true.
Okay.
So I'm here with Jim because on my channel I usually talk about very high level layman's terms types of things to get you guys in tune with the fundamentals behind doing gel nails. But I also wanted to supplement that with some hard facts from Jim, the chemist, so that you guys actually get the real truth behind everything as well, and not so many analogies from me. So we're gonna talk about...
Though analogies are good.
Analogies are great, but sometimes you need the real terminology so that you understand exactly what things are and how they work. And Jim is great at that. So I think us paired together, you guys are going to have some great knowledge about everything that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of lamps here.
We do.
Yeah.
It's just a small smattering of what we have in the back.
Yes. Yes. It's crazy how many lamps are on the market. And this is one of the #1 frustrations that I get from you all using gels out there, is that with acrylic, you just have your liquid and your powder and your mix ratio. With gels, you have to worry about the whole curing process, and there's a lot of variables that go on with that. So I wanted to sit down with Jim today, or stand with Jim today, and go over lamps and how your lamp choice and your product line choice really play a key role in the success of your services. So Jim, maybe you can start out by kind of giving us an overview of lamps, because lamps in the gel industry have changed quite a bit and they keep changing
all the time.
So maybe you could give us a little bit of a rundown first so we can get an idea of what all of this stuff is.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
So one of the things I talk about when I talk about lamps is that the lamp itself winds up being basically your mix ratio.
Okay.
If you want to think about it that way. So if you have an acrylic system and you mix your ball and it's too wet, that's like undercured gel.
Yep.
Right? So if you have too much liquid in your liquid powder mix and that's too wet, it's going to go all over the skin possibly, flow too much, and maybe get on the skin. And if so, it can lead to allergies to the EMA or whatever the other resins happen to be in the liquid. So making sure that you have the proper mix ratio or the proper light are very, very similar. So when we talk about that, keeping that in mind, making sure that the gel is cured properly is huge. So we have LED lights, and then Liz suggested that we bring on a little CFL light. So the CFL is compact fluorescent. That's what CFL stands for. And that's exactly what this is. These can be in a single bar with 2 connectors on the end, or it can be like this 9-watt where you have a connector just on one side.
Yep.
This has become the most popular CFL bulb that's been on the market for quite some time. That's one thing. Or you could take a look at LEDs. So LEDs are the light emitting diodes. So L light, E emitting, D diode.
Yep.
So anyway, so if we take a look at LEDs, great thing about LEDs is that they are very responsive. When you turn them on, they're full power immediately. If they're producing UV spectrum light, they produce it immediately. As soon as the light comes on, there's UV light.
Whereas when you use something like this, it has kind of a warm-up period, right?
There is a warm-up period on that, and that's something that a lot of people may or may not realize. But inside the CFL, there's a little bit of mercury. And that little bit of mercury has to vaporize. And the vapor mercury vapor, actually is what produces the UV spectrum in the light that's being emitted from the CFL.
Right.
So you have to warm up that bulb in order to have the bulb produce mercury vapor.
And that full kind of cure potential.
Then it starts to cure.
Yeah.
So if in old gel systems, when you had maybe 1 or 2 different photoinitiators, it worked well, but you had to wait for this to warm up and then it would start to cure. So if the first client of the day, if you didn't warm up your light, she wouldn't feel as much heat and during the curing process as the next person or later on in the service.
And your cure times are much longer as well.
They're much longer. So because it's not as intense, cure times on this typically 2 minutes.
Right.
But that also has something to do with the photoinitiators. So photoinitiators are the chemicals that we add to gels that activate the polymerization process
Yep.
upon exposure to the light or the energy being emitted by the light source or the energy source.
Yep.
So,
And you guys have heard me talk about photoinitiators before. They're kind of the catalyst, for that reaction. And I've used the analogy, maybe you have a better one, of kind of like lighting a match and then, lighting like a fuse kind of deal, where that initial light up is the photoinitiator that kind of starts that whole process of happening.
yep,
Is that a good analogy to use?
that's a good analogy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also one of the things that, when everyone was using CFL, things were a little bit less complicated as well, right? Because this is kind of a tried and true. They're kind of all the same, no matter what lamp you would get. And
Do you want the history?
kind of, because I think it's important for people to kind of understand how we got into this situation where we have so many lamp options. Why is it so complicated, and why does it keep kind of upping the ante? Because I think that's one of the frustrations that a lot of people have. You guys probably have this as well, which is, you buy some gel, you get yourself what you think is the best lamp on the market, and then next year a new one comes out and it's even bigger and better and things are changing, and so it's kind of hard to keep up both financially and also just with the technology itself.
And it can be overwhelming.
It can be very overwhelming.
Very, very
I
overwhelming.
mean, even me, I own probably 8 different lamps, and that's insane in my opinion.
And one of them's ours, I hope.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I actually own all the lamps you guys have ever come out with. So yeah. But yeah, so how did we get to this point where we went from simple CFL to now we've got all these different types of LED lamps that are out there?
Can I go back in history just a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
so one of the first gels on the market was IBD, and they had a lamp. It had 2 4-watt compact fluorescent bulbs.
Okay.
They're little fluorescent tubes, similar to what you may have seen in the ceiling lights in classrooms and things. And it had 2 of them, and that was pretty much the lamp on the market for a very long period of time.
Okay.
Then they went to a 2-handed light that had 2 8-watt
I've seen that. Yeah.
tube bulbs. And then there were a few companies that came out with bulbs that were the 9-watt style. And the advantage of the 9-watt is you have a lot of emittance coming out of the bulb. And in some cases, you had 4 of these inside the light, sometimes 3 of them in the light, and in some cases, just 1 to cure 4 fingers.
Yeah.
So you have a higher output bulb that would cure the fingernail products really, really well. The advantage on the chemical end is that we have to use less, or we can use less photoinitiator.
Okay.
More photoinitiators you put into it, the more yellowing you would typically have seen.
Yeah.
And that was a detriment. So the 9-watt bulb, less photoinitiator, got a great cure.
Okay.
Okay. That was all well and good until companies started shutting down their plants in various countries because the mercury in the bulb. And as a result, they closed down those plants. A lot of the bulb manufacturing went to China, and the quality of the CFLs would change.
Okay.
So less than desirable by all means. That prompted a push to, I'm going to grab this one, LEDs. So the LED bulb also uses some metals to create the UV light or the 405 light.
Right.
In those cases, if it's 405, it's violet spectrum. If it's UV, really our eyes can't see it too well. Some of the UV is down in the 375 nanometer range. So we're talking about nanometers when we talk about light. That's the wavelength. Anything that is less than 380 nanometers is UV.
Right.
Anything that's greater than 380 is deep violet or violet spectrum. So the deep violet goes from about 380 to about 400, 410.
Right.
Violet spectrum goes from 400, 410 up to about 440.
So when people are, because I remember the first time I started shopping for a lamp, I was so confused because the 2 main things that people talk about are nanometers and wattage, both of which can be very confusing if you don't know which one it refers to. So the nanometers, like Jim was just saying, is that measurement for the actual wavelength of light. And that basically just tells you what color of light or what part of the range you're on. And maybe you can actually just show us really quick what that nanometer measurement is so people kind of understand where that comes into play. Because I remember this made a lot of sense to me when I saw a wavelength, actual diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a wave part or light particle travels, it creates waves like you have in a pond or in the ocean. The distance from this peak here So that peak there might be 365 nanometers, which is UV energy. If instead of 365, it's 395 nanometers, it's deep violet. And it's a longer wavelength.
Yep.
The advantage to a longer wavelength is that that longer wavelength will penetrate through pigmented systems better because it will still penetrate a certain distance, but that distance now goes deeper rather than going back and forth. Okay? If we have 420 nanometers, 420, that's actually just violet spectrum. So in the violet spectrum, it's even longer. So if you have a photoinitiator that you can put into a system that's active at 420 nanometers, what you'll wind up with is a nice deep cure.
Okay.
Okay?
And LED curing gels, when we refer to kind of the gels as far as buckets of, people know them as UV gels or LED gels, or now we have hybrid gels that cure in both UV or LED light. Which one of the which end of the spectrum are we talking about when it comes to LED only gels versus UV only gels?
So the terminology, when we talk about LED gels, typically that comes from the initial launch of LED lamps into the market, curing lights that would be 405 nanometers or even 420 nanometers.
Right.
The problem with those wavelengths is that in order to get those to cure, the photoinitiators that we need to make those gel systems work under that light is that they're bright yellow.
Okay, so you get a lot of yellowing after you cure.
You get a lot of yellowing even before you cure. So the liquid alone is really, really yellow because those photoinitiators are very, very yellow.
Okay.
And then as you go more into the UV range, we can start using photoinitiators that are clear in solution. So you don't start out with the yellow solution.
Yeah. And I'm sure most nail techs have had that experience of you put a clear gel on a nail thinking it's going to be crystal clear, and then you get that ugly yellow tinge to it.
Yeah.
So that's the whole part behind the genius behind changing the formula and also the lamp that you use so that you can avoid those types of issues.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah,
Correct.
that's great.
So that's this.
Yep.
The other thing to keep in mind too, when we look at curing, LEDs typically produce a very, very narrow spectrum of light. So if we're looking at 405, and here's 405 nanometers down here, and let's do 365 on this end. If we have a 405 nanometer LED emitter, its emittance or its irradiance is a very narrow peak. So it might go down as far as maybe 395, maybe up as high as 415, but the mass of what your light is at that 405 plus or minus about 3 nanometers.
Okay. So if you don't have that perfect light match with the perfect gel match, you're going to get some curing issues there because it's like a super, super tight window of what you're looking for.
A very tight window.
Okay.
Very tight window. The other thing that we have to keep in mind, not all LED 405 emitters are the same.
Yeah.
Some of them will take different amounts of electricity and still produce the same amount of emittance or irradiance values. Some of them will all take the same amount of electricity but produce significantly different output peaks.
Right. Right.
So,
and this is why it gets so complicated because there's just all these variables and you're trying to match all these variables of a lamp up with the perfect gel formula so that you everything kind of magically aligns and you get that optimal cure. So this is why a lot of manufacturers, when they tell you just get the lamp that we sell with our line, this is exactly why, because to try and discern, should I get this lamp or will this lamp work with my system that I already own? That's where it gets a little bit tricky, is because you're trying to line all of these different things up at the same time.
a little bit tricky.
A lot tricky.
It gets really tricky. So if you have different lamps, and even if it comes in the same lamp, if the manufacturer of that lamp does not pay attention to the quality of electricity that's being produced from either the AC-DC adapter, or in the circuit board itself, or in the quality of the soldering, or in the quality of the wire that's used, even the same lamp can have different irradiance values or emittance values. Right. So if this emittance is at, say, 8 milliwatts per centimeter squared, that's a decent output. But the same lamp from the same manufacturer, a different lamp from the same manufacturer in the same style, you may get a different value.
Yeah.
Where this is only going to be, say, 5 milliwatts per centimeter squared. The other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the LEDs that people use will vary in quality and longevity. Just like when you buy oil for your car, sometimes you can buy an oil that's good for 2,000 miles or 3,000 miles.
Or you can do full synthetic oil that lasts forever, practically.
25,000 miles.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have a better quality LED, your irradiance may stay at 8 milliwatts per square centimeter for a very long period of time.
Yep.
Could be 2, 3, 4 years. But if you have a lower quality LED, maybe it starts out at 8, but it's back down to 5 here in about 3 or 6 months. And then after another 3 or 6 months, it's down closer to 3.
Yep.
So the longevity of the quality of the cure of that light can vary significantly.
Yeah, and the biggest thing comes down to also, I would say, quality control as well. If these lamps are just getting kind of sent off the factory line, no one's really vetting them, checking them for quality before they get sent off to you guys to buy them. That's also where you get a lot of this variance in the quality and the light that's being emitted, the quality of the light that's being emitted. And similar to what Jim was talking about with the CFLs kind of losing their power over time, you can have an LED lamp that does that as well. So even, I know a lot of people get confused because they say, oh, it's supposed to be 100,000 hours or 5 years it's supposed to last, right?
Right.
But the lamp might function for 5 years, but the actual UV light that's coming out of the lamp might not be powerful that whole entire time period.
You bring up a really good point, Liz, because when these first hit the market, the manufacturers said that their longevity is 10,000 hours. But we were changing a good CFL bulb every 3 to 6 months.
Absolutely.
If you have full clientele. That's not 10,000 hours worth of use. You're closer to 300 hours of use. Likewise, if you take a look at an LED emitter, the manufacturers of LEDs say that they'll last 50,000 hours. But we know from experience that they really last about 2 if you're using them full time. So full time would be 40 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year.
Yeah, so for those of you that are doing full-on, fully booked clients, at least 5 days a week, you also need to consider that you're using this a lot more than, maybe even what someone might have thought when they manufactured this thing. So you brought up a good point about the LEDs, and just to kind of recap, so we're talking kind of about bulbs to begin with, because I think that's one of the main things that people get confused about. So you can have CFL or you can have LED. And both can emit this type of light that will cure gels, right? And we're, there's different types of light that we can control to make sure that this emits the right type of light to cure our gels. But when we're talking about where that light gets emitted, really it comes out of either a CFL or an LED when we're talking about gels.
So the LED and the CFL are bulbs.
Yep. And that's why a lot of you have asked me also is, hey, will my LED slimline light that I use to work under cure my gels? Well, no, because it's an LED, which means it's the type of bulbs that it's using to emit light, but it's not emitting ultraviolet light.
Right.
Right? It might be emitting daylight or something like that.
Yeah, and daylight bulbs, most bulbs that are used in a room are rated based on a Kelvin scale.
Instead of nanometers.
The temperatures that they emit.
Right.
So a full daylight bulb is going to be 4,500 Kelvin to 5,500 Kelvin. And the 5,500 Kelvins can reach down into that violet spectrum.
Okay.
So if you have a 5,500 Kelvin bulb and it's very, very potent, powerful, it's possible that if you have a gel that's designed to cure at 420 nanometers, that it could be curing that gel.
So you could be getting a little skim on it.
Yeah, so when you choose the bulbs to be used in the salon up above or your desk lamp, try and choose a 4,500 Kelvin lamp or in that
And halogen
range.
does that as well too, right? If you have halogen in your ceiling in your salon, I always tell people watch out for halogen because it does that too.
Yeah. And you've seen us at trade shows. We've seen you at trade shows.
Halogen in the ceiling cures everything.
The big bay lights that are up on the ceiling, they'll cure the gel all the way down like 30 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's less about the type of bulb that you're using to emit, it's more about the type of light that's being emitted and whether or not that's going to cure your gel.
Correct.
So talking about LED quality, because this is something I went through when I first started as a nail technician, is I went online, I bought the cheapest lamp I could find because I was not aware that there was a difference. And my first lamp had those typical kind of bubble LEDs. And it wasn't until much later that I learned that there's not only a difference in the whole lamp quality, but even just the LEDs that you use to emit the light make a huge difference.
Huge difference. So we have this little light, and this is a cute little light, but the LEDs that are in here have a knob on them. They're like, we call them popcorn, and they have a little lens. It's a rounded lens.
I call them bubbles because they look like little bubbles.
Bubbles are perfect. So the bubbles can be made out of epoxy, polycarbonate, or glass.
Okay.
All of those substances will either divert the light, absorb light, or change upon exposure to the light. So if it's an epoxy lens on top of the LED, and the LED is creating UV light, that UV light would actually discolor the epoxy.
Make it yellow or
make
darker.
Make it yellow, and then have it absorb more energy. So that over a period of time, not only is the LED fading, but the lens is absorbing more and more of that light, and you get even a worse cure.
Yeah.
Polycarbonates will also change on exposure to UV light.
Okay.
Not as much as an epoxy would, but if it has a polycarbonate lens, it will also change. Some have more of a silicone lens, and those don't change nearly as much.
Okay. So you guys can see there's, even just when we're talking what type of light's being emitted, what type of device we're using to emit the light, we have a ton of variables going on.
It's a ton of variables.
And we haven't even touched on every single variable that exists within lamps. So what else would people look for? Because again, when you're shopping for a lamp, literally the only things you can find as far as little, things to search for are probably light wavelength, nanometers listed on the box, or wattage.
The thing I look for is also LED placement.
Okay.
So where are the LEDs located inside the curing lamp? If you have a curing lamp and it has 4 LEDs in it, and all those LEDs line up with the back of your hand,
You're
your fingers aren't going to cure.
On your nails,
Think of an LED as like a flashlight. So as that LED sits above your finger, it's going to force that light going down one direction, straight down. So if you have that flashlight right above the back of your hand, it's not going to help you out.
Right.
But if you have that flashlight all over your fingers would be, you're going to have a good cure.
And also thumbs too.
And your thumb.
Thumb placement is key.
Huge.
Yeah.
But what if you have a client that doesn't put her hands all the way in? So you have one roll of lights that only covers those fingertips.
Yeah.
But she doesn't go all the way in. Or if you have forms on, she can't go all the way in.
Yep.
There's going to be some areas that are going to be undercured. That wasn't necessarily a problem with compact fluorescence.
Because you've got more of a glowy kind of ambient light. It's not so focused.
The compact fluorescent, the light is being emitted from all around on that glass tube because it's glass everywhere.
Yep.
So
and
as
reflecting.
it produces light, it goes out, and then it's backed by a reflective surface, and so that will allow that light to be used.
Yeah.
You don't get that with an LED. And great light, by the way. This is the C&D light, the new one. But you have all of these LEDs. You notice that the depth where they put those LEDs will allow someone to put their hand in there and have a range to put the hand in and still get a good cure.
Yeah, because clients don't always do it right, and a lot of us don't know that we need to train our clients how to cure their nails. I mean, some of you have seen videos like that about, hey, teach your clients about how important the lamp is for the whole process, because for whatever reason, a lot of clients think this is just magic. They just stick their hand in a magic box and out come cured nails. So keep that in mind as well.
Like an oven.
Yeah, like an oven. Easy bake oven, right? You stick it in and you get a cookie.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important thing for you guys to understand, is that there's just so many different things that go into it. So also we've got lots of different variations on times, right? So this is also, I think, something that's confusing, because the general rule is if you're curing in a CFL lamp, you're talking somewhere between 2 to 3 minutes.
Right.
If you're curing in an LED lamp, then you're talking somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds, or maybe 60, depending on the product. So how did we also get to the point where we have so many different timers and so many different kind of options on our lamps?
It's a really good question on that one. And the reason why is because some lamps, it has a lot of power and you only need to cure for 20 seconds.
Okay.
But can you do a nail in 20 seconds?
I can't.
I can't.
I think 30 seconds is my record for actually applying and whoop, whoop, get it in there.
That's a gel polish.
Gel polish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why with gel polish is because they're not transparent, they are opaque, and they do require different photoinitiators. Those photoinitiators are faster reacting. So if you have a light like the C&D lamp or our dot light, they emit not only visible spectrum light in the violet range, but they also emit UV spectrum. And both of those spectrums will help penetrate deeper and get a better through cure,
Right.
as well as overall cure. And when that occurs, you can do it in 30 seconds or so.
Okay.
The other advantage is that if you have a building gel, some of these lamps have a program built into them where they either flash on and off, which controls the amount of exothermic reaction that the gel will experience upon the curing.
Right.
Or they have ones like our dot light where it just starts off kind of dim and slowly brightens up.
Yep.
So those two factors will allow us to control the amount of exothermic reaction. An exothermic reaction, exo is to give off thermic heat. So the amount of heat that's given off when the gels cure. Every time a bond is formed, heat is generated. So it takes a certain amount of energy to form the bond, and then a little bit of energy is released when the bond is formed.
And that's where that heat comes from.
And the differential between the amount of energy required to get the bond forming and the amount once the bond is formed is what generates that heat. Okay?
And also, you were saying earlier when we were talking that the exothermic reaction can vary a lot, not only with just the gel formula, but depending on what lamp that you use to cure that gel.
Yeah.
So if you're using a lamp that's different than the system that you use, you could also be experiencing more heat than what was intended by the manufacturer, because they didn't make their gel assuming that you were going to use that particular lamp.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things that happen with heat, with curing, with all of that.
That's what some people call overcuring.
Overcuring. Okay, so this is a big topic, and we were talking about this earlier. So there's obviously the undercuring concern and the overcuring concern, but let's talk about the overcuring, because that's really...
Overcuring concern, it sounds like too much exposure could cause brittleness.
Right.
Too much overcuring
or yellowing or
could
something.
cause something like that. But in certain publications where people have cited overcuring issues, they're actually citing the amount of exothermic reaction
Oh, okay.
in the overcuring process. So in that one, the more intense, the higher the emittance at the proper wavelengths from the curing lamp, given the amount of photoinitiators that are in the system, can cause it to cure too quickly. If it's been designed to cure in a lamp like this, but you cure it in a lamp like these two,
You're going to get zing.
you're going to get a lot more heat. And so when we actually make our gels, we make the gels and measure the amount of exothermic reaction.
Right.
When we measure that, we take a thermocouple, we put it into the gel, and then we immediately measure the response of the amount of heat that's generated during that curing process.
Yep.
If we take a gel that's been designed to cure in our light and we cure it in this one, the amount of heat difference could be significant, like 30 degrees.
Oh, wow.
So if you formulate a product to be cured in a little light like this one here, which does not have a high emittance value, and you cure it in a plus, a dot, the C and D light,
Something that's
the,
really
the
potent.
Coupa light, something that's really potent, all of a sudden now you could be generating 30, 40 degrees extra heat
Right.
in that 1 minute period of time.
Yeah.
And that can be just debilitating.
And that's also one of the most, I would say, common negative experiences that clients have when they get gel nails for the first time, is they don't know about the heat factor. A lot of nail techs, when you first start, you don't know about the heat factor. You don't know where it comes from. It's kind of scary. And it just creates this kind of negative feeling about, oh my gosh, I don't like gel nails because it burns my fingers every time I put my hand in the lamp. To the point where I've even had clients where they gingerly put their hand in expecting that to happen. It's almost like a traumatic thing that happens when you get your gel nails, and we don't want people to have traumatic experiences getting beautiful gel nails.
That's where using those hard gel settings on the back of the lamp,
Yeah.
where you have that fading in of intensity. So it starts out, like in our dot light,
Yep.
starts out at 25% power and ramps
And then
up to
grows up.
100.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
that keeps that from happening. Yeah.
All right, and then let's talk a little bit about undercuring as well, because I know this is a really big issue. The overcuring, yes, we can get more exothermic reaction, but with the undercuring, I mean, that's probably one of the bigger issues. And last time we talked about HEMA, we've talked about ingredients, we've talked about kind of allergens in products and how when they're free and floating around and they're not completely bonded and cured, that's where we have problems.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about undercuring, because that is something that plays a big role in gel nails.
So a lot of people think that if they use, say, a 15-second setting on the back of a light, they'll get the same cure maybe as a 1 minute setting or a 30-second setting.
Okay.
Not the case at all. And I'm going to pick on us just a little bit. So if we take our dot light, which has a lot of little LEDs in it, really nice light, But if you cure one of our pink gels and you cure it for 30 seconds and you apply it thicker on the nail, I've seen it, or even our educators apply it over the nail and onto a form, and it's not cured all the way through.
Yeah.
So the surface is cured, the gel that you first put down is cured, but you have a little layer in there that's still sticky and liquid. So that's why we tell people cure those pink gels for 60 seconds, not for 30. Same thing can happen, and that's our system with our light. Imagine if we used our system with a light that's not nearly as powerful. So if we used our pink gel with this little light, and it may cure it, but in order to get that proper cure, it may take 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times it seems cured on the top, but then either, you know, the client will have within, I would say within the first 24 hours, they'll have that bubbling, the peeling, and it'll be wet and gooey in the middle. And that's absolutely a obvious indicator that your gel is undercured. But sometimes it's not fully visible to the person who's putting it on or the person who's wearing it for 2 weeks. And even then, when we have that undercured product sitting on our finger, that can cause problems. Because imagine, what, 2 or 3 weeks you're walking around with
undercured
gel
or
that's
not cured
touching
at all.
your skin and, you know, touching everything. And that's kind of how we get this situation where things are entering our skin that aren't supposed to. And, you know, that's where allergies start to happen.
So you gotta make sure that your gel is always curing.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that, I tell people, to go ahead and take a form, like a nail form, put the gel that you're gonna use on your client, put it on that form at the thickness that you think you wanna apply it, cure it in the light, peel it off the form, and look at the backside of the gel. If it's still liquid and gooey, you know that you didn't cure it long enough.
Right.
So try it again, different form, more gel, put it back on there, double the cure time, and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have actually seen me do that as well. I love that test. It won't tell you everything you need to know about the curing, because, I mean, you use a lot of tools to make sure the gel is curing properly.
We use a lot of tools.
Yes. I got to see all the toys in the back. It was awesome.
It's fun.
But for a simple, is this curing at a surface level? I mean, that's a pretty good test.
Yeah, gel on a form, cure it up, and you don't really need to know that much more than what that will offer you.
Yeah, and basically we're making sure everything's encapsulated and everything's contained, right?
Right. And one other thing to keep in mind too is you can still have gel inside the gel itself after you've cured it still feels hard, but it may not be fully polymerized.
Right.
So when we look at all of the typical potential reaction sites that can take place, if they all take place, it's 100% cured, or in what we call 100% conversion rate.
Right.
So all of those unreacted bonds have now reacted, and they've all converted into polymer.
Yeah.
But if we take and we undercure the gel, we may still have a solid material after it's been cured, but we don't have a full 100% conversion rate. You may have 50% conversion rate, 60% conversion rate, and we try to avoid that as well.
Yeah, and we actually talked quite a bit in our past videos about formula, and formula plays a key role as well, because what a lot of people don't realize is that pigment choice, photoinitiator choice, monomer choice, all of those things also affect how the gel cures and whether or not it's able to carry that polymerization through the product even after the initial surface exposure, correct?
Correct.
So this is something that I often wanted to know, because I like to use a lot of crystals and I like to use a lot of 3D things on top of nails, right? And so actually...
Embellishments.
And actually earlier this year, I sat down with Jim and I said, Jim, you know what? I never thought about it, but if I put something on top of the gel that blocks the light, that's basically what pigment does, or when we put crystals on, it's basically blocking the light from hitting the gel, or glitters, things like that. Is the gel able to cure underneath that? Or is the gel reaction, the polymerization reaction, able to continue even when the gel is only exposed in one part? And that's where formula really plays a big role, because if the formula is not good, it doesn't do that, right?
It won't do that, or it won't do it as long. So just because the curing light may turn off doesn't mean the polymerization reaction has stopped. Because you still have when you expose those photoinitiators to the energy source, the light or what have you, it starts a free radical reaction. That free radical reaction can continue even after the light turns off.
Right.
So if you have a properly formulated system and you put that embellishment into the gel and it blocks some of that light and you cure it for the proper amount of time, even 5-10 minutes later, we've seen it where there's evidence that that polymerization reaction is still occurring.
Oh, wow.
And the way we test that is we have a tensile elongation machine in the back called an Instron. And we can go ahead and cure it, and cut a whole bunch of different pieces out of that gel. and then start pulling on it. And if we can pull on them fast enough, we can see the tensile strength increase over the first 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then it starts to plane out.
So basically it goes from like taffy to hard product and
Well, it
stops
still
being able to stretch.
feels like it's not taffy, but we just, the tensile strength will continue to increase. So maybe initially we measure in pounds per square inch in the United States. So we may be at 1,000 pounds per square inch, 1,500 pounds per square inch, but ultimately after 10 or 15 minutes, it could even achieve, starting out at 1,500 PSI and go as far as like 3,400 PSI.
Oh, wow. So it just keeps getting harder and harder.
It keeps getting stronger.
And gel's polymerization process is much faster than acrylics, right? Because I also remember you told me that acrylic can continue to polymerize for up to 30 days.
30 days.
Wow, that's
So
pretty crazy.
if you do a mixture on acrylic and you cut a whole bunch of, we call them dog bones because it's shaped like a dog bone, and you cut those and then you just set them out and you start doing tensile elongation testing on it.
Wow.
Put it in the instron and pull on it, you will find that tensile strength will increase up to 30 days later.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes, again, you guys know I love analogies, but what I always think of is like the dominoes, right? You set up all your nice dominoes, and if you hit one of them, they should all tip over and continue, even though you only hit the one domino, right? That's kind of how I think about gel getting exposed from one spot and continuing to cure. If the formula doesn't have that nice lineup, it's going to get to one domino where it stops because they're not properly placed, right? And I think of that as like photo initiators carrying that process through the gel no matter where it got exposed.
And that comes down to the right amounts of photoinitiator, the density of the photoinitiator content, as well as the proper ratio of oligomers to monomers, short chain oligomers, long chain oligomers.
Yep.
It all has something to do with how well it cures.
Yeah, so not only does it have to do with the lamp that you choose, but also it varies a lot about which gel that you're putting in your lamp. Now, Jim, I'm going to address something, and I know that you as a manufacturer cannot possibly test every combination of gel and lamp. I mean, you'd be here forever just testing those different combinations. So that's why when you hear manufacturers say, just make your life simple and just buy the lamp that goes with your system, it's because of all of these variables that are going on that it's almost impossible for them to, number one, be sure that they can offer you something that's going to work with all of the different variables that are out there.
Can't do it.
But number two, your job is to make great products and to package those nicely for people, not to test every possible combination that's on the planet.
And you can't test every possible combination.
It'd be impossible.
When was the last day that came by that you didn't hear of a new light on the market?
Oh, it's crazy.
There's new lights being released all the time.
Yeah, and new gels coming on, and
all the time.
It's hard to keep up with. So that's kind of why manufacturers say that. Yeah, and I think a lot of people take that the wrong way and they go, how am I supposed to afford all these lamps? How am I supposed to own a lamp for every system? And
They just want me to buy their lamp.
They just want me to buy their lamp, and that's actually not true.
They just want you to be successful.
They just want you to be successful, and they don't want you to get allergies. They don't want you to have a bad user experience with their product, and that's why they tell you, make sure you use the lamp that goes with our system, because if you use something else, they can't guarantee that their product is going to work in that lamp, and they can't guarantee that your clients are going to have success in their services. So once we talk about all of these lamp issues, what I wanted to also talk about is, obviously, nail techs own more than one brand. I'm one of them. I'll be honest. I own a lot of brands of gel. Okay, I own probably almost every brand of gel that's on the marketplace. And to be honest, I don't own every single lamp that goes with every single system that I own. I'll be very honest about that. So what would you say for someone who's just starting out or can't afford to own more than one lamp, or they're frustrated with this whole buy the lamp that goes with every system type of mentality? Are there guidelines we can use to be better set up for success? I mean, maybe we can't get the guarantee from the manufacturer because we are mixing and matching, which I've told you guys, as soon as you start mixing and matching, it's on you. But if we want to take on that accountability and say, I'm going to tinker, I'm going to mix and match, is there something that you could suggest that would allow us to pick a really good lamp for our gels?
Yeah, besides the answer, buy my lamp.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's obviously the simplest answer. But
buy the best quality lamp you can find.
Okay.
And there's a couple of good reasons. One, as far as the overcuring goes, our lamps, C&D lamp, the Coupa lamp, they all have the ability to control the amount of heat that's being generated, negating the value of overcuring issues.
Okay.
For that heat generation being too uncomfortable.
Okay.
They'll always have enough horsepower if we want to talk about cars, always enough horsepower to get you over that hill to make sure it has the right cure.
Yep.
They will always penetrate as deeply as humanly possible into that gel to get you the best cure.
Okay.
So if you use something that is not recommended for that gel, buy the best lamp you can.
Right.
It's like putting, I hate to say it, it's like putting a V8 in anything.
Yeah.
Right?
You can have a jalopy with a V8. It's like,
I'm a big fan of V8s. So put a big engine in it. It will always pull the boat. It'll always go you over the hill.
Yeah.
It'll always get you to your destination.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. It may take more electricity or gas to get you there.
Yes.
But it'll do it.
Absolutely. And you guys also saw our video. Hopefully you did. If you haven't, I would definitely recommend you guys go back and watch our true gel versus hybrid gel video. Because I often say, if this lamp is powerful enough to cure those true gel products, especially like really high quality builder gels, things like that, if it's able to cure that, then it should be able to cure your hybrid gel polishes and all of the baby stuff down below.
By all means.
Okay.
That's the reason why when we designed our dot lamp, we designed it knowing that we had to cure our hard gel system.
Right.
But if someone wants to cure our P plus line,
Yep.
it will do that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's something, if something's able to fully cure a heavily pigmented color, you know, or like a really, really chalky white builder gel, for example, that we use for French nails, you're more likely going to be able to cure everything else underneath that, because those are really, really difficult to cure.
They are. They're the hardest.
Yeah.
Blacks are the hardest.
Blacks, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, in my experience, it's those chalky titanium oxide whites. It's the super, super black blacks. Red usually seems to be difficult. Yellow seems to be very difficult, and neons.
And the reason why reds are really tough and blacks is they absorb a lot of light. So they don't have a lot of reflection of that light. So as soon as the light hits it, it absorbs it.
Yep.
And so that's one of the difficult parts. Yellows, actually what they do is they absorb that light and transfer it into a different kind of energy.
Really?
Yeah. So they reflect light, but at the same time, they just re-energize that light into a different form of energy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always found yellows to be a little temperamental.
So do we. Every time we make them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also you know, kind of a testament to gel brands as well, talking about lamp quality, but also talking about gel quality, which is if you find a gel that's a difficult color like that and it cures really well, it means that the manufacturers put a lot of time and effort into thinking about that photo initiator, the polymerization reaction, processing even with only, you know, certain amount of light exposure. That reaction is able to continue, like those dominoes, even if only one domino gets tipped in the beginning. And so that's what I usually look for, is a really high quality lamp from a brand that has those really highly pigmented builder gels and, you know, the really, really robust true gel products. And if their red, black, yellow, neon, and chalky titanium oxide white is able to cure, then I know this company has put a lot of thought into the formula, the pigments, and their lamp.
One thing that a lot of people may not know too, when we make a gel, when we tint it to make it yellow or black or red or blue or violet or whatever, we custom blend photo initiators for every different color. So we don't use the same stock blend of photo initiators in a base and you just throw the pigment in.
Yeah.
We put the pigment in and then we add the amount of photo initiators to optimize the thickness of the cure given the amount of given the amount of pigment that we put in and the color of that pigment.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And I have talked about that as well, which is that's my number one way of testing gel brands. If I don't know anything about the company, I'll pick up those colors, test them in their lamps, see how they turn out, even with thin, medium, thick coats. And that tells me right away whether or not this company is using a big vat of clear gel and just throwing pigment in it and bottling it, or are they actually adapting their formula based on every single pigment that they're creating? And that tells you a lot about what's happening behind the scenes.
It does.
So anything else you can tell us about lamps out there on the market? Any other pointers for people that are out there trying to, you know, choose? Obviously, this is a big investment. I would say e-files and lamps are the two biggest investments for nail techs. Any other pointers you have for people out there?
I do. And this is something we don't normally talk about, but it's easy to talk about the cost of an expensive LED light on the market. So maybe in the US market, our dot light sells for $180. And people say that's expensive. But back when you used to use CFLs, CFL bulbs were selling for $15 a piece.
How
and
quickly
a lot
we
of
forget.
them that they're used for. So that's $60 per lamp and you're changing them every 3
to 4 months. Yep.
So, or 6 months at the very latest, really, if they're
and even then, if you
nail
push
tech.
it to 6 months, I know for a fact these used to just come. Your cure would be hit or miss.
Yeah, and then the clients start coming back with lifting,
Yep.
breaking, cracking, lack of gloss.
But it's funny how easily we forget about that kind of stuff. It seems cheap because, you know, maybe this is $19.99 in a beauty supply, but then you're not taking into consideration how many replacement bulbs you have to buy, right? And it's very similar to even LEDs in our house. LED bulbs are more expensive, but you get more use out of them
get a
for a
lot
longer
longer
period
use.
of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they consume less electricity.
absolutely.
So we've seen some places where a CFL may work because the electricity supply is nice and steady.
Mm-hmm.
But the same light in a different location, maybe in a more industrial location, where you have a fluctuation in the quality of electricity, the CFL won't last as long, or you don't get the same cure.
Mm-hmm.
Or during certain parts of the day, you have a great cure, and other parts of the day, you don't.
It's getting kind of those surges.
You get a surge, or you
Mhm.
get a lapse in quality of power,
Mhm.
and as a result, you get a bad cure.
Mhm.
You don't see that nearly as much with the LEDs.
Right.
So it's a more reliable system than the CFLs.
Yeah. Buy once, cry once.
That's it. I
So
like
true.
that.
Buy once, cry once. But at least you guys now know, you know, that this isn't just some smoke and mirrors type of buy all these expensive things and people pushing product on you. It really does play a key role. And this is exactly why companies don't want to guarantee anything other than their system with their lamp, because there's just too much going on to be able to address everything that's on the marketplace.
Yeah, and some companies react to every new trend in curing lights. So for those companies, it's really hard to keep up with whether a cure or not in their newest light.
Right. And changing formula to match all of that stuff too.
Can't
It must
do it.
be a fortune.
Yeah. So, but if you have like the LED dot light versus the C&D new light versus the Coupa light, I can guarantee that all of three of those will have a really good cure.
Yeah.
So, and they don't change often, and that's one of the advantages.
Yeah, it's a good cure and a consistent cure, which is really important.
And consistent companies.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and yeah, I want to throw Jellish in there too. I mean, Harmony does a good job, and they have stuck with the same lights for a while because they work.
Yeah, that 18G has been around for a long
A
time.
long time.
But it is a good lamp. I used that lamp as well.
So there's good, steady companies that to support the products that they make.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think that's great. And hopefully this helps you guys be a little bit more knowledgeable about what to look for with lamps. Now you guys know that it's not all about wavelength and wattage. There's actually a lot more going on, or type of bulb. And now you guys also know that it's not really UV versus LED. It's really CFL versus LED, which I've been trying to push on people because it just drives me nuts. They all emit UV light, but it's about what type of bulb per se that you're using.
Or
to
just
emit
visible
that.
spectrum.
Or visible spectrum as
So
well.
LED is a type of bulb
Yep.
versus the type of light.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, well, hopefully this helps. If you guys have questions, don't be afraid to comment below this video. Jim is always happy to answer any questions. And also, please go over to Chemist Corner and check out the video that Jim did about lamps. He actually shows how to measure UV emittance in different lamps.
Well, it's the quality of the pairing of the light with the gel that you're using.
Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. You went through the whole thing about, you know, actually measuring the light that was coming out of different types of lamps and showing how much it varies between different products.
Yeah.
So.
And the other thing to keep in mind, it's cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're using a piece of $20 equipment that I bought on Amazon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
a
very
form
cool.
and gel.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys can, I mean, for those of you that really like getting deep into this kind of stuff, more power to you. I mean, if you want to, you know, analyze the lamps yourself and kind of make those determinations, I mean, some people are really into that. But I think a lot of you at the end of this kind of lesson are going to go, okay, maybe I just need to get a really high quality lamp, one that will conquer all, or maybe I want to make my life really simple and just
Stick with a brand.
stick with a brand. And that is one of those decisions that every nail tech has to make. But when you do stick with a brand, some of the advantages are there's less variables in your service. You don't have to worry about the outcome of every single service that you're doing. And you get the company that you're buying from to back you up if something does go wrong, because they're able to say, hey, you're using our lamp, our gels, everything. You're doing everything all in the same system.
It's
Something's
one
still
phone number.
going wrong. It's one phone number and you get to talk to someone and they actually help you out because they're able to address something that's actually going on with their product.
Yep.
Yep. So that's kind of why this whole thing exists. But anyway, well, thanks so much, Jim.
Thanks, Liz.
This is awesome. And thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to comment and subscribe. And we will definitely be doing this again soon.
Been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.